Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest Serbia EXPO 2020 podcast. And as those of you who've followed so far might be aware, we are speaking at these podcasts with some of the fantastic guests that we are hosting at EXPO who are participating in various different capacities. And I'm really happy to present today Mr. George Petrovic, otherwise known as Satori, who is a music producer, DJ, live performance specialist, I think we're calling it, right? And from Amsterdam, and why he's participating in the Serbia Pavilion will become clear to us very shortly. So thank you very much for joining us at the Serbia Pavilion.
Thanks for having me.
Is it your first expo? First time you've been to an expo?
Yeah.
And first time you've been at Dubai? You haven't performed here before?
No. I performed here already for 6 years.
Okay, wow.
Yeah.
Amazing. So you know the city well?
Yeah, well, I don't know the city that well because most of the time it's like in and out. So I know the hotels.
That often happens, right?
Yeah, it's part of the tour life, unfortunately.
And but you've had a chance to look around Expo.
The Expo, yeah, yes. For sure.
It's quite impressive, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, man. They built like this whole village out of nothing.
Have you had a chance to look at the music program that they've put together?
Yesterday I went to Goran Bregovic.
Yeah.
He's like, like a hero of me. So I wanted to check him out, and then after his show and before his show, we kind of walked around and just, randomly end up in like Angola stage with like tribal music.
Which
Super
you must
beautiful.
have loved.
I love that. Yeah, well, I love tribal music a lot. So that's nice. You kind of just walk around, you follow your ears, and then something is taking your attention.
Yeah, which has been, it's made it quite challenging as a pavilion to make sure that you keep eyes and ears for any length of time and really communicate messages. But it does make for an incredible atmosphere here, I think. Yeah. I found it really interesting. And I thought though as well that the way that they put together the music program of, really seeking out world music has been a really interesting process. We worked with them quite closely throughout, and they were trying to identify how they could bring things together and make them fit. And they had a thing called Jalsat, where they were having individual musicians from different countries playing together in a kind of massive jamming session.
That's cool.
So they've handled music really interestingly, I think. So, and have you had a chance to look at the pavilion?
The Serbian one?
Yes.
I had a tour before I came in.
And what did you think?
Yeah, really nice. The way they showed the Vinča culture I really liked, because I've been on the Vinča side in Serbia. And, we were with one of the top specialists of Vinča. We did a tour with him.
Yes.
But when you're there, you're watching like pots and clay and old wall paintings, all these things. So somehow your imagination also needs to come alive and understand what it is. And they did that really well here. It really triggers in a better way what Vinča was,
Well, we're starting to have requests to take this exhibition back to Serbia and put it up in Serbia, which I think would make a lot of sense. Yeah, definitely, yeah. And I love the idea as well for Vinča as a kind of metaphor for modern Serbia, that, the first cities, people living together in cities, people finding better ways to feed themselves, people having to communicate and trade successfully, but then this massive explosion of creativity and technology and peacefulness. 1,000 years of coexistence and no current example of war is an amazing message for the future, for Dubai, for the world, but especially I think for Serbia to bring it here. Yeah,
and one thing I learned from the guide, that was for me the thing that kind of stayed with me until now actually, was that when cultures were when cultures were led by man and woman being equal. And he said, in shamanistic and tribal communities, it was just like, we're all in this together, So if you're good in hunting, here's a spear, catch an animal. Doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman, And the difference between man and woman came with warfare. because basically men are better in war than women. So also the harmony between man and woman resemble peace, and that's beautiful, you know. That's what I like that message, you know, to find this harmony between man and woman that resembles peace, and that was for me the thing I like the most about Vincha.
And so you've taken Vincha as one of the themes for tonight's show, right?
Yeah.
So what are we going to see?
So, you know, it's still in progress, by the way. We're working on an album together with Exit Festival. We're working on an album we're going to name Vincha, where we actually take classics from Vincha territorium. So all places where Vincha was, because they were traveling
right
in Spain,
across the region,
right?
Yeah.
They were most well known, or like the majority lived around common Serbia,
yes.
Vincha.
But the rivers through the region were the motorways of the day. So and the culture spread right across.
So you find them, you know, like you find them in the borders of Croatia, you find them in Bulgaria, you find them in Romania, you know, you find them in all these places. So we had this idea of I'm gonna take classics from those regions. So I'm gonna take a classic music from the Balkan, basically. That's how I like to call it, classic music from the Balkan, and make modern electronic versions of it. Which kind of, you know, should tell the history of Vincha, you know, and so tonight I will be with musicians on stage where we play these songs, a couple of them. Again, we're working on an album, so eventually it's going to be like a 1.5 hour show with visuals, and you know, we call it the electronic opera. That's what it needs to be. So it's still in progress, and tonight we're going to play a couple of those songs.
I did read somewhere that you quite like performing like that you quite like the risk. Of bringing it to the table and going, all right, here we are now, guys, what should we do?
Yeah.
Which was quite an interesting thing for me in terms of process of how you take, you know, you're doing something big and new like this.
Yeah.
And you bring it to a stage like this and you kind of going, let's just bring up A game.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's a beautiful emotion behind risk, because it creates tension, and art drives on tension, you know. A movie without tension, we call it a boring movie.
Yeah.
A book without tension, we call it a boring book. Art needs tension, and risk brings tension. So I think by allowing risk on stage, it's creating this energy of tension, the crowd feels it, and that's excitement, you know.
And so then how do you find your musical partners to go on that kind of journey with you? Because I'm sure that not every musician you speak to is ready to go on the improvisation, and
it's difficult.
So and you know, where do you find those people? Is it through just performing live in so many places and you come across people that you think, this guy could do it?
Yeah, let me give you an example of somebody tonight. We have a clarinet player. He's part of the Philharmonica Orchestra of Serbia. Classically trained, extremely, I mean, he's a musician. I will never be as good as him, you know, like it's beyond, but classically trained. So he needs sheet music. He needs to know exactly which bar do I need to start, which is beautiful in some parts, but in some parts I told him, like, you know, brate, I don't know. You need to feel it on stage. I don't know, you know, we need to feel the moment, and look at me, I will count you in. You know, so I would be like,
so you really are conducting as much as anything else.
Yeah, I'm like the band leader, kind of, you know, like giving signs to people, we're gonna do this one more round. And those things are, for really trained musicians, sometimes difficult, because they are very focused on nailing that melody instead of nailing the total performance, right?
Okay.
They're very focused. Let's say they're very like micro level focused, right? And micro level means I have my instrument and I need to play this melody in the best way, and which is great. I mean, that's why we're working with these guys, you know. But at the end, for the crowd, it's all about the performance, right? About the show and about the vibe, and that's my focus. So in some parts, you know, I tell them, I don't know when you need to start.
But I suppose, I mean, one often hears about particularly with music, but also I suppose with dance as well, that you need to know the techniques in order to be able to unlearn, to be able to discard them.
Yeah.
So working with these kind of experts must be refreshing in its own way, just to be able to tap into the genius of people who are playing their A game, and then say, okay, now experiment a bit.
Yeah, well, what for me was like one of my most beautiful moments of last year, we played on Exit Festival main stage. And after the show, this classical trained clarinet player from the Philharmonica Orchestra of Serbia, you know, we did the show, he came to me and he said to me like, hey man, it's the first time I heard art in electronic music. He said, you opened my horizon, I never heard something like this, you know? And I really thanked him from the bottom of my heart. No, it was beautiful. Like, thanked him from the bottom of my heart. But like, thank you for not putting electronic music in some box of, you know, these guys are just playing some beats and that's it, you know. And he felt it, he heard it, and he's here tonight with us again, and he's excited. And you know, with the sound check, I felt like, okay, you understand it more and more and more, you know. So that was for me one of my most beautiful compliments, actually, to hear it from like such a trained classical player.
Have you got any classical musician in mind that you would like to play with in future?
Wow.
Have you got your eye on anyone?
Well, it's maybe a bit easy answer, but I really would like to work with Ludovico Einaudi.
Okay.
Because he has a lot of repetition in his music. It's very much repetitive, you know, like the music he makes. And electronic music drives on repetition as well, you know. So I think we can really find a beautiful bridge between those worlds, yeah.
That would be amazing.
Yeah. And my hero, he was here yesterday. Unfortunately, he left today. I really wanted to meet him, Goran Bregovic. Goran, if you listen, we really need to make a song together. It's going to be beautiful. I know that.
It will be, actually.
Yeah.
It would be fantastic. But so tell me, how did the journey into electronic music happen? Did you learn to play musical instruments as a kid? Did you come from a musical background? What was the progress from, you know, a kid who likes to play the clarinet or whatever, into electronic music? How did that happen?
So let's say my music background education is quite a kind of messed up, because my father's from Niš, so I've been raised with, you know, Serbian music, but Niš is also a gypsy city. There's a lot of Ciganskis there, so I'm also raised with Ciganski music, you know, gypsy music. And I would say by default, I think Balkan music is one of the most richest music in the world, because it's influenced by border countries. So there's a little bit of Italian in it, there's a little bit of Greek in it, there's a little bit of Turkish that came from in the Ottoman time, you know. There's a bit of that in it. There's a bit of Romanian in it. There's a bit of Hungarian. So there's a bit of Orthodox Church music in it. I would say it's such a rich place for music, because they've been influenced by all these border countries. So I've been raised with that. And then my mom is from South Africa. So from a very young age, I started to like African music, which is very much percussive, tribal, rhythmical, chanting, all these things. But then being born in Holland, and I would say Amsterdam is one of the capitals of electronic music, right? So being born in Holland, it's being raised with electronic music. If we speak about the Dutch masters of Tiesto, Armin van Buuren, you know, that's not really my sound, of course, but let's say those are the heroes you grew up with watching television, you know. Here it would be, let's say, Zdravko Čolić, you know, but in Holland it would be Tiesto. So you kind of find out, well, what is Tiesto? Oh, that's trance music. You listen to trance music. From trance you go to techno. From techno you go to house. So being raised in Holland is just being raised with electronic music. So that's why it's kind of mixed up.
But I did read that there was a kind of a pin drop moment, mic drop moment maybe, of when you realized that African beats would transform the way that you performed electronic music. That it was a kind of aha I can lower the beats per minute. I can, still lift the crowd, but without having to do all the hands in the air stuff.
Yeah, it's cool.
How did that come about?
It's cool that you bring this up, because that was an important moment. If you listen to African tribal music, there's a lot of these. It's polyrhythmical, So they mix, let's say, a third rhythm, which is 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. They combine it with the fourth, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. If you go to electronic music, that's only a fourth. So there's and most of the time with techno, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, super fast. But if you bring that down and you combine these two, which is African music, you can play on a lower BPM, but by combining these rhythm, it becomes more energetic. So sometimes people, they are not aware that I'm actually playing this quite technically, but I'm actually playing quite low in BPM because of all these polyphonic rhythms are happening. So it sounds fast and it feels energetic, but it's actually, in terms of BPM, it's actually low. And it has not so much the fist pump element, but because of all the rhythms, it's more the hips start to move and the feet start to move, because it communicates with a different part of your body, these rhythms. So it's more, grooving, and so you get more of the dancing instead of the fist pumping, hands in the air attitude,
And is there any particular musical instrument that you use to illustrate it, or is it always a combination of things?
Yeah, it's always a combination.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's nothing specific you like to
Well,
what we call them.
What I like to do is, for example, to say, okay, we have one section of African rhythm. What if a piano plays this rhythm? And then we take the other section. What if the clarinet plays that rhythm? And then those two start to become like a really wild, beautiful, tribal, but melodic, like a melodic ensemble.
You see, because I think, from personal opinion, I also have grown up in a kind of very multinational environment that, there's a lot of kind of political direction that the world is taking at the moment around nationalism, and, you have to be this and you have to be that. And I think the richness that you get from being able to draw from these multiple cultures and then allow it to embrace you is one of the best things about my life. And it would seem to be that you're also literally just running with it and going, I can be everything. I can be proud of everything that I am. And one thing does not diminish the other.
Yeah, and also, in my case, I've been raised with Yugoslavia. And that all of a sudden became smaller and smaller and smaller and divided and smaller and divided. And neighbors became enemies because
why?
Why, So in my case, this whole idea of it's this country and it's this, to put a stamp on it, And it from South Africa. You've been raised with so many cultures, and in Holland as well. It's so multicultural that, for me, it's just complete stupidity to see you not as my brother. It's really complete stupidity. I think it's a limitation of the mind. If I wouldn't consider you as my brother, for what? Because there's some politician decided this is the border. Yeah. Is that how stupid I am,
And the way that the world works, right, with social media and the connections that you can make direct, we don't require to have our messages communicated through official channels anymore.
Yeah.
You can talk directly through your music.
Yeah.
Which is an amazing opportunity for us as a human species if we can pull it back from the edge of the abyss, I guess.
I also think that internet kind of brought us back a bit more to that global idea, we're one family, we're connected, and I think internet kind of brought us back maybe a bit more to that quality of that we all have inside of us, to consider each other as equal and as brothers,
Yes, I am because you are. My hero Desmond Tutu, who just died. Same kind of philosophy in life. That, we only exist because of each other.
Yeah.
Talking of that, how did you cope in the pandemic? What did you spend your time doing?
So in the beginning of the pandemic, that was even before PCRs and wearing masks, you know? Like in the beginning of the pandemic when we all thought the world is gonna end.
God, wasn't it stressful?
Yeah, it was stressful. It was like from Jan or Feb till around June. But then, first country in the world opened up, and it's Serbia, of course. So Serbia opened up. So I went to Serbia.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was beautiful. No, it was the first country that opened up in June.
Yes.
And this is the beginning, yeah? In June. So I went straight away to Serbia. And it was so nice to see restaurants full and street musicians playing. And you're like, oh yeah, it was just a dream. You know, the world is not about to end. Here we are in Serbia and people are celebrating life. And
well, it was really well handled in Serbia. I mean, it changed a lot of perceptions about the way a government can deliver services to the people. You know, people had been used to queuing for hours for government services, and suddenly they rolled out this vaccine process that was just completely world class.
Yeah.
And yeah, we've really, I mean, it's always still difficult, but it's not been as, you know, you hear about some of these countries with lockdowns of 250 days, and it
like
seems
Holland.
impossible for us that it would be like that.
Yeah, well, and what I liked about Serbia was they found a way to. So, I mean, there are two sides of the story. One side, you want to protect the risk group and you want to make sure people don't go to hospitals. But the other side, you also need to protect people being alive and social and enjoying life. It's super important.
But also livelihoods. I mean, and I think the idea that we've also realized after the pandemic that this is all one thing.
Yeah.
You can't close down for health without, and you can't keep the economy going because the health of the people who run the economy. I think it's been an interesting process for the human race to learn that we are all interconnected. Again, it's that same whole process.
It's that same old process.
And did you find yourself being creative, or did you find yourself going, I can't do anything?
No, not at all. That's why I went to Serbia to record, and I went to Ibiza eventually. So I stayed for 4 months in Ibiza. I wrote there my new album, which will come out in April. So I wrote my new album in Ibiza, which has a lot of songs, let's say, about the pandemic or about the things that I experienced during the pandemic. I couldn't be with my girlfriend. She was in New York. She couldn't fly to Schengen. I was not able to fly to America because they had a ban on each other, Schengen and America, you know. So that was quite sad. And instead of like sitting home and cry, I just decided to transform it to music. So I went to Ibiza and kind of, you know, express what I felt into music. And then very fast, my collaboration with Exit started, and we were speaking about this Vincha album. So I also took the time to write songs for that album.
Awesome.
Yeah, so I was quite productive. I made 2 albums in the pandemic, you know, and I worked on a new show. And
so that was better than most of us who sat on the couch eating biscuits in our underwear for 4 months.
Yeah, but why, you know?
I mean, not that I need an excuse to do that on a general day, but that's another story.
Yeah.
So Exit was then the first place that you performed afterwards, right? When things became open again.
No, the first one was the live stream festival I did.
Okay.
Yeah, so I first did the Extra live stream festival. They were not open, it was just live stream.
All right.
Beautifully big stage, amazing LED screen. So we did the live stream performance. Okay. And then a year later was when they opened up.
Awesome.
Yeah.
But and I also read that you had the boiler room.
No, that was before.
That was before.
That was all before, yeah.
So you had played in Serbia before.
Yeah, I played on Exit Festival 2019.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
That was before the pandemic.
And then, but also then tell me about the Space, the band.
The band from Space, yeah.
Tell me about that too.
Yeah, so I have my own electronic live act, which is kind of a one-man show, and the band from Space is just an extended version of that, which is with more musicians on stage. Okay. And it also allows me to play, let's say, songs that are deeper and difficult to play in a club or on an electronic festival, but they're just too deep, too less dancey for clubs.
Yes, so it becomes more of a live music performance.
Yeah, so then with the band and with musicians, or you can go, you know,
in a
like
theatre kind of.
Yeah, you go more into live rooms. It's more like an 8 p.m. show.
Okay.
Yeah. So like the idea Band from Space is 9 p.m. or 8 p.m. My own live act is 1 a.m.
Okay. And I know that it's going to be asked, but this name Satori, where did that come from?
So I did a lot of Zen meditation.
Okay.
And in Zen, which is a Japanese discipline, it's called the Satori moment. It's a short moment of enlightenment. So you can have that in meditation. You can feel very short enlightened and then it fades out again.
But I'm sure you feel that in music quite often.
But that's why I chose it.
Yeah.
It's like music has that quality to make you enlightened for a very short moment, right? But it's that moment when you are
that perfect note,
or you're with your friends on a dance floor, you go to your favorite band and they play your favorite song. It's that moment where you feel enlightened, and time stops for a while. So as a musician, I'm kind of aiming for that Satori moment with the crowd.
How fantastic. Talking of crowds, where some of the favorite places you've played? Anywhere in particular that springs out as being a complete memory for you that you thought, if I could sustain this Satori moment for anywhere?
Yeah, I think that was just one big Satori moment of 8 hours long. So there is the Días de los Muertos. It's the Day of the Dead in Mexico. I played in the original town where it all started, called Oaxaca City. Where they have this, like the tradition when you go to the graves and you play music on the graveyards and you drink with the dead. You're literally drinking tequila and pour tequila over the grave. You're kind of hanging out with the dead. I played there on a festival. I was supposed to do a 2-hour set. I played 8 hours, but here comes the thing. Everybody, it's a tradition, are painted as skeletons.
Yes.
So I was just playing for 8 hours for 800 skeletons at the Day of the Dead. In the middle of the night, it was like clear sky, like the whole package. And we were in this old ruin, which was an old Spanish church with no roof. So we had the old church walls, but then no roof, and it was a clear sky. So it was just like all these skeletons in front of me, and I played 8 hours. I'm getting goosebumps speaking about it. That was just surreal.
I mean, don't you think that one of the things that when you look back on your life, it's capturing those moments. This is the thing where it's not about things, it's about experiences. And you have these, but to have that for 8 hours is fairly amazing.
It is, it is. And my girlfriend was 8 hours with me, and she was dressed up like a widow, with the black. How do you call it? The black.
The veil.
The black veil, So she was dressed up as a widow, and I was a skeleton. I was also a skeleton. Huh?
So you're in full makeup, basically,
so I was,
for 8 hours.
Yeah, because you can't get in if you're not a skeleton.
Okay.
It's like humans were not allowed. You need to be like a skeleton, or a widow.
Well, I hope that this EXPO performance gives you at least some kind of enlightenment, but I'm not sure it's going to be quite as skeleton-y as that experience.
Let's see.
Yes, let's see. We started at one point talking about how your progression came, and one of the things that we're always asking in these kind of podcasts is, what your advice is to young people about how they can pursue their dreams in music. So is there anything that you would do again differently? Anything that you would recommend that kids look at in order to... and another interesting thing, which I think it happens quite a lot in arts and culture generally, is the kind of reluctance of the parents' generation to allow their children to move into something like electronic music. I mean, it must be quite a... So what kind of advice do you have when you speak to kids about these kind of things? Yeah,
I think that you really need to be able to go on stage and fuck it up. Just be terrible in what you do, and you need to allow yourself to do that. And I think nowadays we live in such a perfect world, because the moment you open social media, Everybody's perfect. You see the perfect picture of your friend, you see the perfect picture of your girlfriend, and they're all having the successful life, right? That's what you see on social media. So it gives this illusion that you can only be on stage until you are really good. But you need to be on stage and f it up, because that's when you learn. I learn my most things by just f***ing it up. Really, no, but it's really important, and I can't say that enough. My first gig, there were 300 people in front of me. After 10 minutes, everybody left, and just my friends were there, kind of, staring at me like, yeah, we want to give you an idea that it sounds nice, but it's actually really bad what you're doing. But I learned these moments because I got back home and think about, okay, what went wrong? Because I believe in my music, but somehow something went wrong, and that's where you grow. So you need to be able to suck. And that's really important.
I mean, that's something that comes across with a lot of kind of more in tune advice these days, is that, nothing is perfect the first time around.
Yeah.
And you have to work at it.
Yeah.
And you can't be humiliated by your failures, because your failures are part of your journey of getting it right.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I think like the Serbian spirit, they're really hard workers. And I'm not saying it because we're now here in the Pavilion, but I must say they're really hard workers. I've been working with filmmakers from Serbia, musicians. Sometimes they work 12 hours a day. My father was such a hard worker. My brother is a hard worker. My sister is a hard worker. We all have this like Serbian blood in us. And it's just like that. You go on stage, you f it up, you go back home and get back to work.
Well, and one of the other things apart from the great sense of humor, is the resilience that Serbians have, which allows this kind of approach. Pick yourself up, do it again, until you get it right. Yeah,
exactly. So it's like stubborn, believe in your art, but don't try to be perfect. Just make mistakes, go home, fix it, and be better, and don't stop. That's it. Yeah. Don't stop. Sometimes when people say to me like, you're so talented, then seriously, I don't think I'm talented. I think I just don't stop until I have it right. Somebody's talented for me if it's like in 1 hour makes a masterpiece. I can say, wow, you're really talented. I'm not doing that. I work for some 6 months on one song. I just don't stop.
Yeah. And I mean, and that's another thing, right? There tends to be this, perhaps it is social media, that musical genius is musical genius, and suddenly, people will sit in front of the piano at 4 years old and play the piano, but actually it's just really damn hard work.
Yeah.
And repetition and practice and practice and practice.
Yeah.
Just, it's a good lesson to learn that, I think.
Yeah, and one thing to finish this, the quote I really like is, confidence is not about your relation with success, but your relation with failure. If you're comfortable in failing, then you have confidence. It's not your relation. Everybody can feel comfortable with success. Of course, we all can feel comfortable. But it's your relationship with failure that makes you a confident man or a woman. So that's the thing. Allow yourself to fail. It's beautiful.
What's next after this? The album coming out, I think you mentioned.
Yeah, the album in April.
Wow.
Yeah, and I'm gonna do.
And how do you promote that? Do you do it traditional ways of having to go and glad hand at news studios, or how does it work?
Yeah, I would like to do like this really like dedicated album tour. That's the traditional way, right? But then my kind of tour schedule is so mixed that, for example, I'm playing here tonight. This can't be part of my album tour because this is about Vincha, So you have all these like mixed shows which have different contexts. Yeah. But I must say, in my case, my album comes out when I play on Coachella in America.
Oh, wow.
So that's like, we're gonna combine these two, like that. That's a good moment, I think.
Fantastic. And tonight's show, what time does it start?
I'm gonna do 8:30 to 9:30.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the Jubilee stage, is it?
Yep. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah, beautiful stage.
Well, I know you've got a lot to do, so I'll let you get going. Thank you very, very much for coming. Thank you very much for joining us. And we look forward to the next podcast from the Pavilion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, man. Thanks for having me.